Hello, my name is Jay McDonough. I'm a Chartered Health and Safety Professional, and I'm here today to talk about RIDDOR. So what does RIDDOR stand for? It stands for the Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences Regulations 2013. Where do they apply? They apply to any workplace in the UK, and RIDDOR Northern Ireland 1997 applies to Northern Ireland. So why does the government require employers and other people to report injuries and ill health and dangerous occurrences within the workplace? First of all, it's a legal requirement. Now, the government says we should do it, and therefore becomes a legal necessity. The report informs the enforcing authorities, the HSE, local authorities, and the Office for Rail Regulation, ORR, about deaths, injuries, occupational diseases, and dangerous occurrences, so they can identify where and how risks arise and whether they need to be investigated. This allows the enforcing authorities to target their work and provide advice about how to avoid work-related deaths, injuries, ill health, and accidental loss. The HSE also uses this data to provide UK industry sector accident and disease statistics to enable intra- and cross-sector performance analysis. So let's have a look at some RIDDOR definitions. They define an accident. We'll go into these definitions in a moment. Work-related, again, we'll look at why it's important for work-related to be defined. The definition of reportable injuries, not all injuries need to be reported, and who should undertake the reporting, and that's down to the nominated responsible person. So going through these one at a time. An accident, in RIDDOR, an accident is a separate, identifiable, unintended incident which causes physical injury. This specifically includes acts of non-consensual violence to people at work. Injuries themselves, e.g. feeling a sharp twinge, are not accidents under RIDDOR. There must be an identifiable external event that causes the injury, e.g. a falling object striking somebody. Cumulative exposures to hazards, such as asbestos, which eventually cause injury, e.g. repetitive lifting leading to joint damage, are not classed as accidents under RIDDOR. This would be reportable under the occupational diseases heading. So moving on to work-related definition. RIDDOR only requires you to report accidents if they happen out of or in connection with work. The fact that there is an accident at work does not in itself mean that the accident is work-related. The work activity itself must contribute to the accident. An accident is work-related if any of the following played a significant role in the accident: the way in which the work was carried out, any machinery, plants, substances, or equipment used for the work, or the condition of the site or premises where the accident happened. Let's now look at the list and definition of reportable injuries. The following injuries are reportable under RIDDOR when they result from a work-related accident: the death of a person, that's Regulation 6, specified injuries to workers, Regulation 4, injuries to workers which result in their incapacitation for more than 7 days, Regulation 4, injuries to non-workers which result in them being taken directly to hospital for treatment, or specified injuries to non-workers which occur on hospital premises, Regulation 5. So who is the nominated or defined responsible person under RIDDOR? We'll find out now. The responsible person is defined as an employer, the person in control of the premises, a self-employed person if the reportable event takes place, arises from work's activities within the self-employed person's premises or workplace. So under RIDDOR, these are the defined responsible people who are required to report injuries, accidents, and dangerous occurrences if they are reportable to the government. Okay, so moving on. So what are the legal requirements? We just said a moment ago that RIDDOR is a legal requirement. So what are the requirements? Certain injuries, diseases, and dangerous occurrences that arise from workplace activities must be reported to the UK government. The defined responsible person is required under law to report them to the government. Failure to report when required to do so is a criminal offence and attracts fines of up to £20,000 in the Magistrates' Court and unlimited fines in the Crown Court. So not reporting something is not a light infraction of the law. Individuals deemed responsible can also face a period of imprisonment for up to 2 years. The defence against this is to prove that they did not know they had to report, but had taken reasonable steps to find out. Okay, background to RIDDOR. RIDDOR places duties on employers, the self-employed, and people in control of work premises to monitor the workplace for these events and to report them if necessary. The above, as we said earlier, are defined as the responsible person. RIDDOR requires the responsible person to report certain serious workplace offences such as deaths, specified injuries and other accidents, defined occupational diseases and specified dangerous occurrences. We would classify them perhaps as near misses. So it's the responsible person's duty to report if you are an employer, a person in control of premises, and the self-employed. So an employer must report any work-related deaths, certain work-related injuries, defined work-related cases of disease, and certain near misses that involve their employees wherever they are working. People in control of premises must report any work-related deaths, certain injuries to members of the public and self-employed people on their premises, dangerous occurrences, some near-miss incidents that occur on their premises, and the self-employed if working in somebody else's premises and suffer either a specified injury or an over 7-day injury, then the person in control of the premises is responsible for reporting. Therefore, they should ensure that they know about it. If there is a reportable accident while working on your own or in domestic premises, or if a doctor tells you that you have a work-related disease or condition, then they need to report this. You can always replay this video at your leisure if you go onto the Health and Safety Clinic, and where anything arises within your own workplace, you can review this video at your leisure and see if it is reportable or not. Okay, so can anyone else report? Can members of the public, employees, and the injured person themselves? What about employment agencies? Do they have duties under these regulations? What if you're a gas supplier or a gas engineer? If you're working offshore, and special cases such as mines, quarries, pipelines, and wells? Well, we'll have a look at that now. So, members of the public, employees, and injured people. Reports should only be submitted by the responsible person or persons. It is therefore not appropriate for injured people, members of the public, or others who do not have duties as defined under RIDDOR to use the RIDDOR reporting system. If an employee suffers a work-related injury or reportable disease, they should inform their employer, who should then report the matter if it is reportable under RIDDOR. If there is concern that an employer or other responsible person has not made a required report, then they should be asked if they have reported the incident, and or the employees or the trade union representative should be approached. If there is still doubt that the incident has not been reported, then the HSE can be contacted directly to discuss any concerns. There have been incidents in the past reported in the press whereby people have been seriously injured, and the employer or the responsible person has not reported that incident, and people have been fined and in extreme circumstances have gone to jail. What about employment agencies? In many cases, the employment agency is the legal employer and is under the same legal obligations as any other employer to report accidents and ill health to their employees. The problem is employment agencies are not in control of the workplace normally. So in practice, therefore, agencies should ensure that responsibility for reporting under RIDDOR is clearly assigned to the appropriate person based on the particular facts of the employee or the employment relationship Agencies should also ensure that reporting responsibilities are clearly understood by host businesses and the workers. Gas suppliers. If a conveyor, filler, importer or supplier of flammable gas learns that someone has died, been found unconscious or has been taken to hospital in connection with the gas they've distributed, filled, imported or supplied, then this must be reported, including unburned gas combustion products, e.g. carbon monoxide, or fire explosion incidents. In practice, the reporting duties are usually undertaken by the gas emergency services providers, ESPs, representing the gas conveyors. If you're a gas engineer, then gas safe registered engineers or their employer must provide details of any gas fittings, appliances, flues or ventilation systems they consider to be dangerous to such an extent that people could die, be rendered unconscious, or need to be taken to hospital because the design, construction, installation, modification, or incorrect servicing could result in an accidental leakage of gas, incomplete combustion of gas, or inadequate removal of products by the combustion of gas. Fittings that are dangerous solely due to the lack of maintenance are not reportable. They become reportable if they lead to an incident. Working offshore. For most incidents at an offshore installation, the responsible person will be the duty holder under the Offshore Installations and Pipeline Works Management and Administration Regulations 1995. For diving projects, the responsible person in relation to accidents and dangerous occurrences is the diving contractor. HSE Energy Division can provide specialist advice on the reporting procedures of offshore workers. And finally, special cases. Quarries, mines, pipework and wells. And there's some examples of what these installations look like. In the following special cases, the responsible person is, in relation to a mine, the manager of that mine; in relation to a closed tip, the owner of the mine associated with that tip; in relation to a quarry, the operator of that quarry; in relation to a dangerous occurrence at a pipeline, the operator of that pipeline; at a well other than water well, the person appointed to supervise operations, or where no person is appointed, the licensee under Section 3 of the Petroleum Act 1998. Okay, so what is reportable under RIDDOR? Deaths and specified injuries are reportable. Certain occupational diseases, carcinogens, mutagens, and biological agents. Over 7 days incapacitation, dangerous occurrences, and gas incidents. Coronavirus cases are only reportable if contracted within the workplace. So let's look at these divisions or categories in a little bit more detail. So let's start with deaths and specified injuries. If someone has died or been injured because of a work-related accident, this may have to be reported. Not all accidents need to be reported other than for certain gas incidents. However, a RIDDOR report is required when an accident is work-related. It results in an injury of a type which is reportable. The death of any person, Regulation 6, is obviously reportable. All deaths to workers and non-workers, with the exception of suicides, must be reported if they arise from a work-related accident, including an act of physical violence to a worker. Specified injuries, Regulation 4, include fractures, amputations, loss or reduction of sight, crush injuries, burns, scalping, loss of consciousness, and enclosed space injuries. So again, going down this list, when does a fracture of a bone in the body become reportable? Fractures other than to fingers, thumbs, and toes, in other words, any major bone of the body. Bone fractures include a break, crack, or a chip. They are reportable when diagnosed or confirmed by a doctor, including when they are specified on a GP fit note. In some cases, there may be no definitive evidence of a fracture, especially if an X-ray is not taken, but the injury will still be reportable if a doctor considered likely that there is a fracture. Self-diagnosed suspected fractures are not reportable. Amputations. Amputation of an arm, hand, finger, thumb, leg, foot, or toe. RIDDOR definition of amputation includes a traumatic amputation injury at the time of an accident, the surgical amputation following an accident as a consequence of the injuries sustained in the workplace. In other words, somebody may not lose a finger or a limb at the time of the accident, but if the accident causes any part of the injured person's body, as defined above, to be later amputated surgically, then it is considered to be a work-related amputation, and therefore it is reportable. Loss or reduction of sight. Any injury likely to lead to permanent loss of sight or reduction in sight in one or both eyes. Any blinding and injuries causing reduction in sight are reportable when a doctor diagnoses that the effects are likely to be permanent. Crush injuries. Any crush injury to the head or torso causing damage to the brain or internal organs. Injuries to the brain or internal organs in the chest or abdomen are reportable when caused by crushing as a result of an accident. Burns. Any burn injury, including scalding, which covers more than 10% of the whole body's total surface area or causes significant damage to eyes, respiratory system, or vital organs. Burns which meet the above criteria are reportable irrespective of the nature of the agent involved, and so include burns caused by direct heat, chemical burns, and radiological burns, and burns caused by friction. Medical staff may indicate the approximate proportion of skin suffering burn damage, and charts are often available in hospital burn units to assess what area of the body has been burnt. In adults of working age, the rule of nines can help estimate the body's surface area, BSA, which has been affected by the burn. If the BSA of a burn exceeds 15% in an adult, they are likely to require hospitalization for intravenous fluid resuscitation. If the eye's respiratory system or other vital organs are significantly harmed as a consequence of the burn, this is a reportable injury, irrespective of the amount of surface area covered by that burn. Damage caused by smoke inhalation is not included in this definition. Scalping. No, I've not been scalped, I'm just naturally bald. Any degree of scalping requiring hospital treatment. Scalping is the traumatic separation or peeling of the skin from the head due to an accident, e.g. hair becoming entangled in machinery. Lacerations where the skin is not separated from the head are not included, nor are surgical procedures where skin removal is deliberate. Any loss of consciousness caused by head injury or asphyxia. Loss of consciousness means that the injured person enters a state where there is a lack of response, either vocal or physical, to people trying to communicate with them. The length of time a person remains unconscious is not significant in terms of whether an accident is reportable, but 1 second will do it. Asphyxia, lack of oxygen, may happen when a person enters an oxygen deficient atmosphere, such as a confined space, or are exposed to poisonous gases, e.g. carbon monoxide. Enclosed space injuries. Any injury arising from working in an enclosed space which leads to hypothermia or heat-induced illness, or requires resuscitation or admittance to hospital for more than 24 hours. All of these situations make the incident reportable under RIDDOR. An enclosed space includes any space wholly or partially enclosed where there is a significantly increased risk to the health and safety of a person by virtue of its enclosed nature. This includes any confined space as defined by the Confined Space and Regulations 1997, and additionally similar spaces where there is a foreseeable risk of hypothermia, e.g. a cold store. Hypothermia and heat-induced illness includes situations where a person has an adverse reaction to physical injury to intense heat or cold acting on the body, so they need help from somebody else. Okay, moving on to occupational diseases. Must be diagnosed by a doctor. Diagnosis includes identifying any new symptoms or any significant worsening of any existing symptoms. For employees, they need to provide the diagnosis in writing to their employer. Doctors are encouraged to use standard wording when describing reportable diseases on written statements they make out for their patients. The self-employed. Self-employed people do not normally obtain written statements from the doctors when off work through illness. To take account of this, for a self-employed person, the doctor's verbal diagnosis of a reportable disease is sufficient for it to require reporting to the HSE or the enforcing authority. As with employees, this only applies if their current job involves exposure to the associated hazard. Moving on and looking down the list of defined occupational diseases as specified in regulations 8 and 9. Okay, employers and self-employed people must report diagnosis of certain occupational diseases where they are likely to have been caused or made worse by their work. So we can see on the left here, there's a list of defined occupational diseases, which we'll now go through. So carpal tunnel syndrome, work involving regular use of percussive or vibrating tools. Carpal tunnel syndrome is caused by compression of the median nerve, which controls hand sensation and movement. It is not always caused by work-related factors. Typically, workplace risks are associated with the use of handheld vibrating power tools, sanders, grinders, drills, chainsaws, etc. Severe cramp of the hand or forearm. Where cramp is so severe as it leads to a clinical diagnosis, it can be severely debilitating and impair a person's ability to carry out their normal work. I suffered that for a few days last year, and it is very painful and very, very debilitating. This condition is reportable when it is chronic, i.e. lasts for some significant time and is associated with repetitive work movements. The condition is usually characterized by a person being unable to carry out a sequence of what were previously well-coordinated movements. An acute incident of cramp, which may take place in the course of work, is not reportable, which is why mine was not. Occupational dermatitis. Dermatitis is reportable when associated with work-related exposure to any chemical, biological, irritant, or sensitizing agent. In particular, this includes any chemical with the warning may cause sensitization by skin contact or irritating to the skin. Epoxy resins, latex, rubber, chemicals, soaps and cleaners, metalworking fluids, cement, wet work, enzymes, and wood can all cause dermatitis within the workplace. Corrosive and irritating chemicals can also lead to dermatitis. Construction work, health service work, rubber making, printing, paint spraying, agriculture, horticulture, electroplating, cleaning, catering, hairdressing, and florists are all associated with dermatitis. Dermatitis can be caused by exposure. If there is good evidence dermatitis has been caused solely by exposure to common agents found outside the workplace rather than to an agent at work, this is not reportable. Hand-on vibration, a particularly nasty occupational disease. As you can see at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a photograph of somebody who is suffering relatively advanced stages of vibration white finger. Workers whose hands are regularly exposed to high vibration, i.e. where vibratory tools and machines are used, may suffer from impaired blood circulation and damage to the nerves in the hand and arm. The disease is known as hand-on vibration syndrome, or HAVS for short. Other names include vibration white finger, dead hand, and white finger. Typically, workplace risks are associated with the use of handheld vibrating power tools, such as percussive drills and hammers, rotary grinders and sanders, chainsaws, etc. Risks are also associated with holding materials which vibrate while being processed by powered machinery, pedestal grinders, rotary machine, rotary polishers, etc. Occupational asthma. Asthma is reportable when associated with work-related exposure to any respiratory sensitizer. In particular, this will include any chemical with the warning may cause sensitization by inhalation. Known respiratory sensitizers include epoxy resin fumes, solder fume, grain dust, wood dust, and other substances. Asthma is a common condition in the general population. If there is good evidence that the condition was pre-existing and was neither exacerbated or triggered by exposure at work, then the condition is not reportable. Tendinitis and tenosynovitis of the hand or forearm. Tendinitis is an inflammation of a tendon. Tenosynovitis is the inflammation of the tendon sheath or synovium. Workers who undertake physically demanding repetitive work are at increased risk of developing these conditions. Physically demanding work includes, but not restricted to, repeated lifting and manipulation of objects, e.g. block laying assembly line work, activities involving constrained postures or extremes of movement in the hand or wrist. That's the end of the occupational diseases list. So moving on to carcinogens, mutagens, and biological agents. Cases of cancer, occupational cancers. Cases of cancer must be reported where there is an established causal link between the type of cancer diagnosed and the workplace hazards. These hazards include all known carcinogens and mutagens, including ionizing radiation. The following must be reported under RIDDOR: mesothelioma, or lung cancer in a person who is occupationally exposed to asbestos fibers. Mesothelioma is a type of cancer which is only caused by exposure to asbestos. Cancer of the nasal cavity or sinuses in a person who is occupationally exposed to wood dust. Reports are only required when the person's work significantly increases the risk of developing the cancer. In some cases, the medical practitioner may indicate the significance of any work-related factors when communicating their diagnosis. Cases of cancer are not reportable when they are not linked with work-related exposures to carcinogens or mutagens. As with other diseases, cancers are only reportable if the person's current job involves exposure to the relevant hazard, i.e. carcinogenic materials. Biological agents. All diseases and any acute illness needing medical treatment must be reported when it is attributable to a work-related exposure to a biological agent. The term biological agent is defined in COSH regulations, the control of substances hazardous to health, as a microorganism, a cell culture, a human endoparasite which may cause infection, allergy, toxicity, or other hazard to human health. Work with hazardous biological agents is subject to specific provision under COSH. Work-related exposures to biological agents may take place as a result of an identifiable event, such as the accidental breakage of a laboratory flask containing such biological agents, accidental injury with a contaminated syringe. This is particularly important control factor on construction sites. Receiving an animal bite which is already infected with a biological agent. Unidentified events, workers exposed agents to agents without their knowledge, where a worker is exposed to Legionella bacteria while conducting routine maintenance on a hot water service system. A report should be made whenever there is a reasonable evidence suggesting that a work-related exposure was the likely cause of the disease. The doctor may indicate the significance of any work-related factors when communicating their diagnosis, as mentioned earlier. Minor infections common in the community, such as colds, bronchitis, or stomach upsets, cannot generally be attributed to work-related exposures to biological agents, and so are generally not reportable. However, where there is reasonable evidence of a work-related cause, such as an inadvertent contact with the infectious agent, a report should be submitted on that basis. Acute illnesses requiring medical attention must be reported when they result from a work-related exposure to a biological agent, including its toxins or infected materials. Further guidance on occupational illnesses associated with biological agents is available via that following link. Over 7-day incapacitation and 3-day incapacitation. Accidents must be recorded but not reported under RIDDOR where they result in a worker being incapacitated for more than 3 consecutive days. If you're an employer who must keep an accident book under the Social Security Claims Payments Regulations, that record will be enough. However, for over 7-day incapacitation of a worker, accidents must be reported where they result in an employee or self-employed person being away from work or unable to perform their normal work duties for more than 7 consecutive days as a result of the injury. This 7-day period does not include the day of the accident, but does include weekends and rest days. And that's a question I'm asked quite frequently. The report must be made within 15 days of the accident. So in other words, you have 7 or 8 days after the 7-day period to submit the report. Dangerous occurrences. These apply to all workplaces and include incidents involving lifting equipment, pressure systems, overhead electric lines, electrical incidents causing explosion or fire, explosions, biological agents, radiation generators and radiography, breathing apparatus, diving operations, collapse of scaffolding, train collisions, wells and pipelines, or pipeline works. Incidents occurring at any place other than an offshore workplace. There are 27 applicable categories of dangerous occurrences. Lifting equipment, the collapse, overturning, or failure of load-bearing parts of lifts and lifting equipment. Pressure systems, the failure of any closed vessel or of any associated pipework other than a pipeline, forming part of a pressure system as defined by Regulation 2.1 of the Pressure Systems Safety Regulations 2000, where the failure could cause death. Overhead electric lines, any plant or equipment unintentionally coming into contact with an uninsulated overhead cable of greater than 200 volts. B, proximity to such electric cables causing electrical discharge, i.e. arcing. Electrical incidents causing fire explosion. Structural collapse of more than 5 tons of materials. If you have a landslide, let's say on a construction site, you would estimate, is that more than 5 tons? If it is, then it would be reportable under RIDDOR. Collapse of 5 meters or more of scaffolding, irrespective of whether anybody became hurt as a result. If a fire stops work for 24 or more hours, etc. If you need to find the others, then please look up the RIDDOR regulations. Incidents occurring at specific types of workplace. Offshore workplaces. The dangerous occurrences in this list are reportable only if they occur at an offshore workplace. Offshore workplace is defined in Regulation 2 and includes wells, offshore pipelines, and offshore installations associated with exploitation of mineral resources. Offshore wind farms and other renewable energy installations are not included. Some incidents only apply to offshore installations. Note that this section, offshore installation, includes subsea units but excludes tieback wells, pipelines, and associated apparatus, or worked within 500 meters of the installation's main structure, fixed towers not associated with oils and gas activities. Special advice on reporting requirements is available via that link there. Again, please see Schedule 2 of RIDDOR for full definitions of reportable dangerous occurrences at specific types of workplace. Lastly, gas incidents. Distributors, fillers, importers, and suppliers of flammable gas must report incidents where someone has died, lost consciousness, or been taken to hospital for treatment to an injury arising from that gas. Such incidents should be reported using the Report of a Flammable Gas Incident online form. Registered gas engineers, such as the Gas Safe Register, must provide details of any gas appliance or fittings that they consider to be dangerous to such an extent that people could die, lose consciousness, or require hospital treatment. The danger could be due to the design, construction, installation, modification, or servicing of that appliance or fitting, which could cause an accidental leakage of gas, incomplete combustion of gas, or inadequate removal of products of the combustion of gas. Unsafe gas appliances and fittings are reported via report of a dangerous gas fitting online form. Okay, so how do we report these incidents which have just been defined? The reportable person is required to advise the HSE of any RIDDOR reportable events. We can do this by online reporting, by telephone, reporting out of hours, and RIDDOR, and we also cover RIDDOR and the General Data Protection Regulations 2018 in this section. So the most common way of advising the government of a reportable incident, accident, dangerous occurrence or disease is by an online reporting facility run by the HSE and is on the HSE website. So the responsible person logs onto the HSE website and completes the appropriate online report as shown. The form is then sent directly to the RIDDOR database. There's an option on all forms to download a copy. These forms on the HSE website reflect the different categories of RIDDOR events shown on the left-hand side of the screen. All of the forms are similar in content, but individual forms contain unique questions pertinent to their categories. The forms are easy to use and ask for basic information, such as dates, times, workplace, personal information, etc. And this is just giving us a quick view of what you would see on the HSE website if you want to report a dangerous occurrence. Okay, by telephone. Telephone reporting. A telephone service is provided for reporting fatal and specified incidents only. All other events must be submitted online. The HSE run an instant contact centre on 0345 300 99 23 with opening hours of Monday to Friday 8:30 to 5 p.m. So what happens if something of a major nature, such as a death, occurs out of hours? The HSE has an out-of-hours duty officer on call at all times to take details of serious incidents only. Circumstances where HSE may need to respond out of hours include a work-related death or situation where there's a strong likelihood of death following an incident at or connected with work. A serious accident at a workplace so that the HSE can gather details of physical evidence that would be lost with time, and following a major incident at a workplace where the severity of the incident or the degree of public concern requires an immediate public statement from either the HSE or government ministers. Less serious incidents can be reported out of normal working hours by completing an online form found at the below address. RIDDOR and the General Data Protection Regulations 2018. The responsible person under RIDDOR legislation has a legal obligation to make the notification and to have a legal basis for processing the personal data of the injured person, the data subject. The HSE processes this data as part of their public task. This is their legal justification for processing the data. Okay, so when do we report these events? For most types of incidents, including accidents resulting in the death of any person, accidents resulting in specified injuries to workers, non-fatal accidents requiring hospital treatment to non-workers, dangerous occurrences. The responsible person must notify the enforcing authority without delay, either online or the HSE Incident Contact Centre can be contacted by telephone to report fatal accidents or accidents resulting in specified injuries to workers only. In any event, a report must be received within 10 days of the incident. For accidents resulting in the over 7-day incapacitation of a worker, you must notify the enforcing authority within 15 days of the original incident using the appropriate online form. Cases of occupational disease, including those associated with exposure to carcinogens, mutagens, or biological agents, as soon as the responsible person receives a diagnosis using the appropriate online form, a report must be made to the HSE. What records do we keep? A record of any reportable injury over 7-day injury, disease, or dangerous occurrence must be kept by the responsible person. A PDF copy of the report submitted to the HSE can be downloaded, allowing it to be saved and printed on the workplace premises or other suitable storage facilities. If a copy of the online form is not kept, records must include the date and method of reporting, the date, time, and place of the event, personal details of those involved, and a brief description of the nature of the event or disease. In the case of accidents, employers must keep an accident book, B1510, under Social Security law, can use this for keeping the records of injuries, although a separate method is needed for cases of disease. RIDDOR reports are not passed on to insurance companies. If it is felt that the insurance company needs to know about a work-related accident, injury, or case of ill health, then they must be advised separately from the RIDDOR report and preferably in a timely manner. On that note, insurance companies will normally want to know about any reportable incident as soon as possible, and any delay could affect any future payout. Summary, we're here at last. For something to be reportable under RIDDOR, it must be work-related. It must be within the defined list of diseases, incidents, accidents, and dangerous occurrences. They must be reported by the responsible person as defined under RIDDOR. They can be reported via telephone, via the Incident Contact Centre, or online using the HSE website facilities. They must be reported without delay and within 10 days or 15 days for over 7-day absences. And if not reported, the responsible person faces fines and possibly imprisonment. Further information can be obtained via the HSE guidance document INDG 453. You can download a free copy of it from the HSE website. Okay, well, thank you very much for getting this far. If you have, that was quite a long and detailed session. If you have any problems, then drop us a line, email us, or contact us in any way that you wish to do so. And please remember, harm is not an option. Thank you very much for your patience. Have a look around our health and safety clinic on YouTube, and please subscribe if you wish to do so.